lesson number 18. Yeehaw! So, today in this lesson we're basically going to be covering advanced intervals this time. So if you guys feel confident with your basic intervals and your intermediate intervals, and you got writing them down and recognizing them and you can see them and everything, then you're ready to tackle this one. Okay, so let's get started. Woo! Alright, so for advanced intervals we're going to add two new terms. One is augmented and the other is diminished. Now, first thing that you have to start thinking of is, when you think of these, is start thinking of these kind of motions. So what I mean by that is, think of a balloon. Now, think of where the maximum kind of, like a good normal capacity for that balloon is. So it's just filled with the right amount of air. Or you could think of your stomach. So you're like, I've just got the right amount of food, yum, okay? So you can think that way. Now, if you have more than you should, okay, and your stomach is over full, you're kind of like, oh, I feel bloated, right? And it's like bigger than it should be. Or the balloon is so full that it's about ready to pop. So in music theory, we would call that an augmented interval, okay? Augmented is bigger, expanding, so augmented, okay? So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So always think of the distance between the two intervals as bigger. Just like a third is definitely bigger than a second, and a sixth is bigger than a third, the number is going up. So basically, when we have an interval select, like say a sixth, right, and it's augmented, it actually means that it's bigger than what a normal sixth would be, but it's written on the staff like it looks like a sixth, but it's actually a very big, wide sixth. Whereas if it was a diminished sixth, it looks on the staff like a sixth, like you could count it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever, but it would still be very small. Like it would be smaller than a sixth should be. So here's basically a little chart that helps illustrate that. So again, these extra things, just like major and minor and perfect, helped to pinpoint where that note actually is. These actually help even more, except they get even more precise, and it gives you more options. Well, not really more precise, it just gives you more options to play around with. Okay? So it gives you all the possibilities with all the different accidentals or combinations you could get yourself into. There's always a term to name every one of them. So yeah. So, okay, so let's start with perfects, because it's pretty simple. So we have these boxes here. So I have like an O in one box and an X in the other and a P in this box for the perfect. So what this all represents here is, so we have a perfect fifth here, okay? Now, say it's G to, or C to G, okay? If that interval space increases by one semitone, so it's wider, then it becomes an augmented interval. So it becomes an augmented fifth, okay? So for example, say we had G sharp here and C here. So C to G would be a perfect interval. So now if we make it bigger, we add a sharp to that, but it still looks like a 5. So it's like C to G sharp. So the sharp makes it bigger, but on the staff paper it still looks small. It looks the same size, I mean. So it's an augmented interval. It's kind of deceiving. So it's bigger than normal, so they're a bigger distance apart, so it's an augmented fifth, okay? That's what you call it. So how you'd actually do this is you take an X and you go an X with a 5. So an augmented fifth. That's why the X is there. So same thing with diminished. If it's smaller, so you take the two things, and now say I had that G again, and a C to G, and again I take that G and I turn it into a flat. Now it's getting closer together, so now it's diminished, okay? Just like your stomach gets diminished if you don't eat after a while, you're like, oh, I'm diminishing, oh, diminishing, oh. Anyway, okay, so it's getting smaller when you diminish, okay? Now, flip side, I was just changing the top one, but you can also change the bottom one too. But it's reversed, because it's all the direction that matters. So now, say I have a C flat and just a G, what happens? Well, now we're going to have an augmented interval, because it's getting bigger again. So it's C flat augmented. So it's an augmented fifth again. Notice how here I was using a sharp and it became augmented. Here I'm using a flat and it's getting augmented. So it's the direction that matters, okay? Now diminished. Okay, diminished would be, if you're doing the bottom, it would be a sharp, so it'd be C sharp. So it's going forward. It still looks like a fifth, but it's diminished. Okay? So that's perfect intervals. Now, with these ones, sixths, or, well, the majors and minors, it doesn't matter at all. Actually, why did I even say that? It doesn't matter at all. Okay, so basically, you start on the major, okay? If you go down a semitone from that, it's minor, okay? If you go down a semitone from that, it's diminished. If you go up a semitone from the major, it's augmented. So again, if you use that example, so say it's going from, let's just be really simple. Let's say it's going from C to A, okay? C to A. Alright, so that's a major sixth right off the bat, because in C major, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, C is A. So C to A is a major sixth. Now, if I add a sharp to the G, or not the G, sorry, the A, if I add a sharp to the A, it becomes an augmented sixth, okay? Technically though, if it was like a B flat, it would be a minor seventh, but anyway. So based on wherever you write it, it changes the name of it. So if I have it going from C to a B with a flat, it's still the same key, but you would write it as a minor seventh. But if I had it from C to A sharp, now it's an augmented sixth. Okay, so it goes right from major to augmented. Now, if I was on A and I went to G flat, or sorry, I keep thinking G. Okay, so from C to A flat. Okay, so you're going from the C to the A, and you go down to flat. Now it's getting smaller, so now it's a minor. Now you go even more, so you take it down a double. Okay, then it's a diminished sixth. So a perfect fifth and a diminished sixth are the same notes. Like they are literally, like you play the same notes, but what you call them is different. Just remember how we were talking about inharmonic intervals before? Or inharmonic notes, I mean. Like you would have, you know, A sharp and G flat. What am I, I went the backwards way again. You can really tell my brain isn't really working the best right now, eh? So it's G sharp and A flat are inharmonic. I was going the opposite way. But anyway, so yeah, basically it's getting smaller again. So if you have C and A, and then you go down a double flat, you're on G. From C to G is a perfect fifth. So on the sheet music, if it looks like C to G, if it's written that way, then it's a perfect fifth. If it's written C to A double flat, then it's a diminished sixth. So you put a little circle for the diminished sign and then sixth with a TH. And that's basically how that works. So then you have to kind of take your basic intervals and intermediate intervals, and you have to kind of, you have to have a solid foundation before you can just step into doing this stuff, because it hinges on what you know in previous interval stuff. And it also hinges off of your key signature knowledge and your scale knowledge and all that other stuff. So if that's not strong, it's going to be a very slow process for you. And it can be very confusing. So if you aren't solid there and you still want to keep going for some reason and you want to keep going ahead, maybe just skip over this part, this lesson, because this is actually intervals that you learn in the next level of theory, but I wanted to all include it so that it was kind of fresh in your brain. So if you don't get this right away, don't worry, it's not that big of a deal. You can just move along, and if not, then yeah, you can learn it. But yeah, so if I'd try to go back and make sure that all your videos are good, but your lessons, I guess. But yeah, anyway, so that is basically the whole swing of advanced intervals. Okay? So let's get some homework going on. Homework. No. Alright, so here's what I'd like you to do. For your homework, take a combination of notes. So it could be C and G, okay? And I'd like you to describe it at least 2 ways, alright? You could do 3 ways if you really want to. That's like the expert challenge. If you can describe it 3 ways, then you're pretty good. You won't always be able to find 3 ways, I don't think. Although I don't really play around with intervals that much, so it's not really something at the front of my brain all the time. But anyway, I kind of just go at it as I kind of need to. But anyway, so if you want to try looking for as many ways to describe that one combination of notes with different interval patterns or ways that you can do it, all the power to you. But there's always usually 2 ways to describe an interval, pretty much always 2 ways. So basically what I want you to do is take a combination of 2 notes like C and G, or D flat and A flat, or A sharp and B, or whatever, and take those notes and then rearrange them and write them on the staff in 2 ways at least to get the same notes, but you describe it in 2 ways, and then name that interval. So for example, you could go, you could go C to G, okay? Just very basic. So that's a perfect fifth, that's one way. Now how else can you name that? Well, you could do basically from C and then do an A double flat, and then you've got your diminished sixth, okay? So that's right there, you just write those out, and then right underneath go diminished sixth, so with the circle with the 6, and then perfect fifth, and put them side by side, and then you have that package. So when you have a complete package kind of like that, then do that another one and do 30 of those packages or combinations together, and then that's your homework, okay? So I hope you guys found that helpful, and maybe it wasn't as scary as you thought it would be, but there you go. So, or maybe it is more scary than you thought it would be. But either way, it just takes practice and just determination. You just keep going and then you'll get it. Okay, well anyway, I hope you guys found that helpful, and I'll talk to you guys later. See ya! Bye!